So I'll call the meeting to order, and do you want to do roll call for us?
Thanks. Committee member Wall.
Here.
Thank you. Committee member Simon.
Here.
Thank you. Committee member Lang. Here. Thank you. Committee member Burtis.
Here.
Thank you. Committee member Alden is not present today. Vice Chair Ruiz. Here. Thank you. And Chair Johnson.
Here. Yeah, Leslie's a family member in town, so she excuses me. Do salute the flag.
Oh, there it is.
That's how we can live another meeting. Billy, want to start that? I
pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag
of the United States of
America.
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
for all.
Do we have any people online for open time?
We do not at this time.
Aww. Next item is introduction to new committee members.
Yes, so you all met one of the committee's new members, committee member Lang, at the last meeting, and we have our second new committee member joining us this evening, Patrick Burtis. So Patrick, would you like to introduce yourself? And then I know David, want to have the rest of the committee members do a quick introduction as well.
Sure, great. And you can call me Pat, by the way, it's fine. Nice to meet you all, and apologies for missing the first meeting. I was on vacation in a place where we actually didn't have Wi-Fi for 3 days, which was fantastic. So, apologies to miss them. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I think you probably saw my application or CV, but just to briefly recap, I've been working at the intersection of technology and the environment for the better part of 25 years. In some form or another. Currently, I'm a venture capitalist. We invest in technology companies as a firm in Europe and also Latin America, which is what I'm currently covering. So I spent a lot of time in South America. My interest in sort of venture capital stemmed initially from my interest in the environment. I've always been an environmentalist, and around the late 90s, I was out here actually doing some consulting work. I started to see the convergence of technology being used for, good environmental causes, mitigation effectively. So did a fair amount of work in the carbon space, materials science, a number of other things along the way. So I've got a keen interest. I've been traveling all over the world, working for years, and have never gotten myself engaged at a local level. And I felt like now's the time to do that. So I'm pleased to be here. Academically, I in undergrad studied physics and economics, and then I did a master's at Yale Forestry School. It's now called Yale School of the Environment, focused mainly on climate change and energy systems. And then I was a research associate at Imperial College in London, focused on carbon sequestration when I first joined the firm that I'm at, which is actually based in London. So I have a decent academic grounding in at least sort of the more industrial side of climate change and carbon and so on. But have now been able to see a lot of startups across a whole bunch of fields, and have been, thinking about how we can hopefully incorporate some of what's happening from a technology point of view into sort of very local action that we're going here. So pleased to be here.
Well, welcome. How long have you been in the Bay Area?
10 years. So we omitted that part. We actually longer than that, but we lived in Corte Madera for 10 years. We're in East Corte Madera, my wife and daughter and I. And prior to that, we were in San Francisco for a few years, and then we were in London before that.
I'm over on Golden Pine. If you ever
Oh, you are? Oh, okay.
come by and say hi.
Yeah, we're on Fitzroy right up the hills.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, welcome. Martin, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Martin Wall. After a career in data product management with Equifax and in the mortgage industry, I ran a biodiesel plant in Richmond for a while. That was my costly graduate education in biofuels. And then I worked with Whole Energy to try to set up a biodiesel plant, which we actually got permitted in Pacifica in a red-legged frog area. So anybody who's tried to get get things permitted knows what an accomplishment that is, whether or not the plant got built. And I worked for Genscape for a while, monitoring biofuel plants around the world. And I'm currently a consultant with Lee Enterprises Consulting, supporting project financing engagements, when they come up. So, but really, I'm pretty much retired at this point. So welcome, Pat. Pleased to have your expertise. It's great.
Thank you.
Why don't we start down on this end, and then we're done on the ties, I'll ask Phoebe and Adam to give a brief intro. Do you want to start? Do I go next? Just a brief intro.
Didn't we give that last name?
Well, you're Pat here.
Out here, we're going all through it. Okay, let's see.
We can be brief.
We can be really brief. Okay.
Yeah.
Energy, I've been in energy for 40 years, half in consulting, half in PG&E, various positions, a lot of natural gas policy, natural gas operations, some in, spent a first part of my career in conservation, investing in conservation technologies to displace nuclear. I have a degree in economics and energy management from Penn. Been in Corte Madera for 11 years. Yeah, I guess Martin and I had a big discussion about the grid and different things. So I'm very aware of California policy, California grid issues, California natural gas issues, California regulatory issues. So bring that to the table.
Phil, you want to go?
I'm Phil Simon. I'm a general contractor. I've worked in Alaska, Washington, and California. I've also managed commercial property and multifamily residential property. I've designed and built warehouse office facilities and worked on municipal projects, industrial projects, mostly multifamily and residential at Sea Ranch, where I worked for the last 12 years. And I've consulted with architects on a few projects that I haven't worked on. I've also was born and raised in California, in Corte Madera, as was my father. And although I've worked other places, I'm back here now. And so hope to lend some expertise in the construction field.
Phil owns one of the most amazing pieces of property in town. If you ever get to have lunch at Phil's place. Amazing.
Hi, it's nice to meet you and excited to have you on the committee. So I have been a resident of Corte Madera for 15 years. I think last time I introduced myself to you, I said 10, and then I realized I was. I have 2 teen girls at Redwood High School. I've spent the majority of my career in tech, mostly on the sales and marketing side, and business strategy. And I was one of the inaugural members of this committee when we first started it. So it's been a real pleasure. And I think I come from the perspective of just a resident learning, because I learned so much from this group. And so a lot of what I focus on is outreach and how we continue to educate the community and take action. Yeah.
Well, I'm just so humbled by all the people that we have on this committee, and I welcome. So David Johnson, I'm a developer now, transitioning from being an architect and a planner. 4 decades doing that with an international practice, doing pioneering projects in sustainability. I was a partner with Bill McDonough for over a decade. Bill wrote the book Cradle to Cradle.
He was at Yale a lot.
Huh?
He came to Yale a lot when I was there.
Yeah, and then my first position in architecture was working under Caesar Pelli in downtown. Yeah, downtown New Haven. I got to walk through the campus every day. So I've been able to work on projects around the world, literally around the world. So, but being able to give back to my community in Corte Madera, I was a planning commissioner for 2 terms when I first moved here, and then I'm one of the members who started this committee as well. And then I spent some time on philanthropic boards and such. I'm on Leslie Alden's board and Drawdown Bay Area. I'm on Healthy Building Network board of directors, Green Science Policy Institute, a few of the positions, and I'm trying to retire. So that's the next stage. So I'm doing project development now. Developing regenerative communities in California. So, and I've got an entrepreneurial background as well. I'm developing a product in crop tech and med tech space. That's a side job.
Okay.
Do you guys want to go?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Phoebe Golden. I'm the town's climate action and adaptation coordinator. Been in this role for about a little over 8 months now. Previous to this position, I was working for the city of Sebastopol, leading the development of their climate action framework and working with their committee there. And I have a degree in environmental sciences from UC Berkeley, as well as minors in public policy and Spanish. And I think you all know, but I'm your first point of contact on the staff side here, and very happy to be stepping into meetings.
Me too. Thanks, Phoebe. Adam Wolf. It's great to see all of you. I'm learning a lot from all of you as well, and it's impressive group of individuals with a lot of diverse expertise. So it's really that's why I'm coming to all the meetings, because it's great. It's a good group. So welcome aboard. I'm been the town manager now for about a little over a year. Prior to that, about 9 years, planning and building director. And I think actually, did we meet through that?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Now it's coming back to me. When you said Prince Royal, I was like, oh yeah. Okay. So they're still living with, the construction in there. In any case, started as I was born and raised in Mill Valley, went up through the school systems in Mill Valley, dabbled in a variety of different things after college, including some journalism with our local Marine Scope newspapers, which back in the day, if you remember those, and ultimately went to New York for graduate school in urban planning, and started my career both for a few years in nonprofit affordable housing organization, and then ultimately with the city of New York in their planning department before coming back home to Corte Madera about 10 years ago. So I'm here, helping Phoebe, but also, personal interest as well. Obviously, as a planner, this is work that our field is sort of very much interested in as well. And just trying to lend support to the entire group and sort of creating some actionable work for the town, and not only on policy, but in education and just figuring out ways that we can all support each other and sort of making progress on this issue. Action. So, thank you.
These are important years that we have here in front of us. Okay. Anyone want to add something else? Okay.
Just a quick note for the new committee members. The setup that we have here is called the OWL. And so it's capturing all of the audio and video in the room, and it will find you if you're talking. So that just so you're aware, if you're talking, the OWL will focus on you and zoom the camera to you, and it's recording everything. So we used to have the system with the mics here. We don't use those anymore. We just have the OWL. Okay.
And there's no mute. It picks up everything.
Yes.
Good, bad, ugly.
Just so you're aware.
No side comments.
A question, who is the agenda determined?
Yeah, the agenda, you'll see at the end, there's a item called future agenda items. So that's a time to bring up anything that you'd like to discuss with the whole committee. And then I work with the chair and vice chair to determine the agenda before it goes out.
If there's anything you want to bring, you can bring it up here or you can bring it up outside. And as long as we don't cause an issue with the Brown Act, we can discuss things offline in the subcommittee or otherwise.
Okay.
And did you receive training in the Brown Act? Or a little bit, are you familiar with that?
I read through it and I think we discussed it a lot.
Yeah, and we'll be talking a little bit about that. In,
I got a little briefing when I was, called in remotely last time on why we identity address, et cetera, et cetera. So a little bit, not.
Yeah, I'd encourage you to bring up items in this meeting afterwards to Phoebe or staff or to me.
Maybe as time permits towards the end. That's.
Yeah.
And there's some good literature as well that I'm happy to provide, anybody who wants it.
On the Brown Act.
On the Brown Act.
Yeah.
Yeah, we usually.
there are links in the staff report about the ad hoc subcommittees to previous trainings that our town attorney has given to this group. So that's a good starting point overview of the Brown Act.
But relative to the agenda, you can even just reach out to Phoebe in between meetings if there's something.
Okay.
Right.
I encourage that. There's no reason to go through me or anybody else. And Phoebe's very good at communicating the potential agenda items. And we do a little bit of choreography on things that might take a couple of meetings to build up to something. There are topics that we've been working on with staff that will continue to be working on with staff. So, but I just, especially with new people, new ideas, new experiences, this is a really new enterprise here, new committee, and I just think, and you bring such a wealth of knowledge that I want to find a way to bring that forward.
But I'm not, I'm reading the agenda. I'm not as I'm up to speed on what you're working on right now and what needs to be addressed and finished, and before you bring in everything else. But anyway, so carry on, please.
Okay. And then Martin, how long are you going to be remote in your plans? Just to be nosy.
Yeah, well, we're coming back. We're coming back November 1st. So that's it.
Okay.
And I think too, I had it on my note after the last meeting, but I think it would be good because we're able to do a one-on-one conversation to just say and make introductions, let you know what we're working on. So I think that can help both of you to just get some perspective on either what we're working on currently or things that we've worked on in the past. So you'll have some context coming in. So I'll do that. And I encourage all of us to do that if that's okay. Right.
And the North Star is the climate action plan. Yeah. So we try to support the town in executing the climate action plan. I see that kind of like that's our purpose.
And we have a purpose mission document that was used to approve the committee and make it a formal committee. So if you don't have that, well, we can share that out with you as well.
Okay.
I'll take that.
Anything else?
No, just to say that, yes, all that is on the committee's website, and I can share that with you if you haven't yet found it. And we can also have
Sorry.
more of a discussion of some of the work plan items as part of the ad hoc subcommittee's discussion that might come up.
Yeah, the work plan's a great resource.
Yeah.
And that's on the agenda too today.
Yes, the ad hoc subcommittees.
Is that it? So moving on, approval of meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes of July 19th?
I'll move to approve them.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Meeting minutes of July 19th are approved. Thanks for general business. If you want to leave this business.
I think Amy is going to kick off the first item 5A, which is the discussion of committee participation in the prom show.
Yes. So the Lions, we talked a little bit about this at the last meeting, the Lions Club EV and Classic Car Shows on September 9th. From 11 to 3. So we'll have a table there in partnership with Ride and Drive Clean. And the goal there is for us is to educate and drive EV pledges, as well as to promote our checklist that we've created as a committee, similar to what we did at the 4th of July. So we had a table at the 4th of July event at the park. And we promoted this checklist as well as all of the materials that we have to educate the community on rebates and all of the different resources that we have. And we also set up a craft table for our kids. So we just want to replicate the same thing at the car show. But this time we'll do it with Ride and Drive Clean as well, which we have done in the past 2 years as well.
What's the date?
It's September 9th.
Do you provide availability of charging stations or resources so people can know it's bigger items?
Oh, you mean in terms of education around charging stations?
Well, education around how, I mean, I know there are apps, but yeah, or, you know, here's Corte Madera, here's a map or whatever, or here's how to install it.
You know, it's a good question. We don't, but Ride and Drive Clean probably does, but I don't know that we've actually had that resource available. But I'm going to look into that. So it's a good question. I don't know the answer.
I mean, I'm not sure I'm the right person to ask, but if you need help.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And the EV pledge is, I'm gonna buy an EV, is that what?
Yeah, like my next car, and this is something we want to make sure that everyone knows that any action they can take to help the climate ranges. It ranges from, you know, purchasing an EV all the way through to eating less meat in your diet. So that there's something for everyone to contribute. However, if you're in market to buy a car in the next 6 to 18 months or whenever, we would love you to pledge that purchase to be EV. So, in the past, we've gotten, you know, 30 to 50 pledges, sometimes 20. So, you know, it's not a gigantic number, but every little bit counts.
Do you have a copy of the information you distributed or how was that? Or is it poster things?
Yeah, so we have our checklist that we just launched at the 4th of July parade that's on our site. And then there's lots of documents that we have at the table that highlights both organizations within Marin that educate on home electrification, obviously Ride and Drive Clean, but also things like maketheswitch.org. I always get it confused, Make the Switch. The switch is on, which is outside of Marin. So we have Bay Ren and Electrify Marin there. So those is like a smattering. But what we do have and what I love to do is get volunteers here is we do have talking points that we've provided that give you a sense like of some of the stats that you could use about Corte Madera and also just other background information. So that might be helpful for you. PD, I don't know if you'd add anything else in terms of what we have at the table.
Yeah, we have, like you said, a bunch of flyers from different organizations that offer resources and rebates to residents. And I have most of them are either out on the counter in the building department or in my office if you want to come take a look at them after the meeting.
Karen, in early days as a committee, we spent a lot of time on the website, thinking that if there's content for the citizens or public people that are curious about it, we'd like to direct them to the website. And with the experience that you two bring and a fresh set of eyes, if there's something else that we should have on the website or information that you think would be useful to include, I'm glad to hear about it. So, encourage it.
It would be helpful to know, I read the climate action plan on I think it was in March, you had the sort of status update, which had the work plan in it. So there's a lot of initiatives in there. What are the things you're actually pushing in terms of outreach? Like, it sounds like EVs is one, electrification of.
I think we did a triage, and Amy helped me out here, but as a committee, we did a triage and looking at the greenhouse gas emissions profile of Corte Madera. Although we could focus on many different things. We decided to focus for now on single family detached homes, emissions and mobility.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
We've made the checks. Those were our two primary objectives in the last year was like home electrification and EV adoption. However, that's not always doable for everyone in the community. So around the 4th of July, we created a checklist that includes other things, like I said, around diet. There's home electrification, there's EV adoption, there's diet, oh my gosh, you guys, what are the other two? Consumption and appliance. Martin, help me out. We spent so much time on that list, I should be able to rattle it off.
Yeah, MCG green.
That's
is on
right.
there, and also using less energy.
Yeah. All right.
energy efficiency,
Can I ask
the
you,
less sexy one.
these
Yeah.
are all very, proactive greenhouse gas reduction. When I read the climate action, the 2020 staff report, maybe that was, okay. I was really struck by how much of Corte Madera would be impacted by it as well.
Yeah.
And does this committee address getting those areas ready? Or-
So Phoebe has the challenge of leading the initiatives for the city, not just on climate adaptation, but also climate mitigation.
Okay, so that's not,
So, and so that when the town council created this committee, the focus is climate action. So what can we do to reduce the impact in the future? And then there needs to be mitigation measures. It's really critical, and there needs to be more work done on mitigation, but it's not the purview of this committee.
this can,
Not to say we won't stray there, but really with our precious time and
Right.
resources here, just to focus on,
and neither than fire prevention, that's not part of this. Okay,
it's all, it weaves together, right?
yeah,
But if the focus of this body has really been on climate action,
Okay.
greenhouse gas reduction.
Can I just add back to your original point about
Yeah.
your September 9th event? When you talk about EV adoption, are we also talking about sort of car substitution? So different modes of transport, getting people out of their cars?
Yes.
Bikes, e-bikes, scooters, whatever. Is that also a thrust of?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I think we have transportation as the line and it's like either go EV or just drive less, right? Riding bikes, but we don't, but there's not like a concerted effort around pledges to get out of the car or anything like that.
Mhm.
It is one
What's
of the.
It's one of the
line items on
actions.
the checklist.
Yeah.
is driving less.
And does this committee work with MCDC, for instance, on some of their initiatives in bike coalition?
Not directly.
how does the bike, there is a separate bike and pedestrian community.
Yep.
So I would think that would be more under there. Perhaps you should coordinate.
But I think this is a really good conversation because we've been in this committee for
Yeah.
several years. And so like, have a look at the list, think about other things we might add or change up. I will also say too, that these events are really great to get us in the community and get people knowing about our committee. But we talked a little bit about it at the last meeting, which is we need amplification. So like 30 to 50 pledges is nice, but it's not really going to move the needle in the way that we need it to do. So another thing that we have on our list, which has been put off because of some other things that we're working on around these events, is getting to groups within the community. So we can hit like a homeowners, and I know we've talked about it for a while, but how can we hit 30 people in a group that then can go spread the word to, 3 or 4 more each? Those are the things we need to start weaving in with the events. So I just put that out there because I would appreciate any new thinking on that. We need amplification and frequency.
I think Phoebe's going to walk us through, sorry, Karen, but
Okay, I'm sorry,
item
go ahead.
5C
Yes.
is going to be consideration of restructuring and
Right.
new subcommittees. So if there's I think that'd be a good time to discuss this even a bit more.
But I would love to get volunteers. So who is available on the 9th for like a 2-hour shift?
I could probably do.
Yeah, okay, great. And then what we'll do is we'll put a calendar invite and put everyone on the calendar invite, and within the calendar invite, we'll say, please come at 12 to 3 or whatever it is.
Good note, I think I was told that 15 EV dealers are going to be there,
Wow.
which is, I didn't even know there were that many, so in a sense, it's, I think the work of the Lions Club, they're trying to create this sort of, and I think one of our more economic development strategies is like, can Corte Madera become the hub for EV dealerships and EV sales? And that would be great, but it's 15 was a lot. It was up, I think they only had about 6 or 7 last year. So it's much greater participation by the EV dealers this year.
And even more from the year previous.
I think so. Yeah, it's growing. So it's a great to be out there and sort of dovetail with that work. I think at this event in particular.
I
Yeah.
didn't go last year. Maybe you could just describe for people what you got like that.
It's a EV and classic car show, so it's actually a really fun community event. They do a really great job. So they have, like Adam said, they have the EV dealers there, mostly EVs, and then there's the classic car show, and it's about sort of like past to present, right? Like in the future, like this is what we've done in the past, and here we are into the future. They have food vendors, they have music, and it does pull out the community. It's broader than Corte Madera, which is great. But last year they had Mercedes. They have a lot of the high-end dealers, but they also, I believe Ford was there.
Where is it?
Right across the way in the Village parking lot.
Okay.
So, and this
Where
year.
the circus is right now.
where the
Okay. All right. Yeah.
circus. But we are gonna have our town EV there too at our little booth, so, we're bringing the Kia or the ID.
The EW, the ID.
Yeah. So,
We would expect questions about electrification and reach codes and climate action plan. Is there a little bit of that happens?
we talk a lot about electrification, because if you're even thinking about an EV, you're a prime candidate to start thinking about electrification in the home. So yes, we talk a lot about that. And we field questions, and it's great to do it with Ride and Drive Clean, because if somebody is starting to think about an EV, but is got the barrier of like either range anxiety or, whatever the blocker might be, charging and availability of charging stations, those are great conversations to have them there. So that could be good. It gets windy though. So like last year, our tent blew away and broke.
So where is it exactly?
In the Village parking lot to the left, it's like the overflow lot across from Nordstrom,
Where the circus
The
was.
circus filter.
where they used to have the movies.
So windbreaker, yeah.
Yeah.
It's 12 to 3.
It is, I'm looking here, it's 11 to 3. And so we set up around 10:15, and it literally takes 15-20 minutes to clean up. So I'm thinking 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 2 to 2.5 hour shifts.
Yeah.
Either from 10:15, 10:30 to 12:30 or 12:30 to.
I can probably do it. Let me just get back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I can do it.
Okay, thanks. We've got it down now. All right. That's it. Oh, and Oktoberfest, I guess, with the other events, but we have to check with Chamber of Commerce on that, right? Okay, Julie.
Yeah, I don't have an update on that.
Yeah.
Karen and Pat, the other thing that you'll hear, theme here is that we try to partner with other organizations that are aligned, so that we don't have to be, we don't have to invent everything and be everything, but we can partner with other organizations, MCE and others to stand on their shoulders or to collaborate. So you'll hear that coming up often. Leslie Alden is a great resource in relationships with those organizations because of all that she's done here in the county. So it's.
Just a dumb question. Does the committee have any budget, or is it all kind of?
Oh, we're so well funded.
We've got lots of budget. You
Have you
just
got your first
basically
paycheck?
ask them and.
Yeah, there's not budget that's specifically dedicated to the committee, but there is some funds for climate action work in general. So, for example, with the outreach work that we've been doing, being able to get takeaways for the table, yeah, those sort of items.
I'm sorry, what did you say about Oktoberfest? We're not sure yet.
Oh, no, it's going to be, sponsored by the community foundation is all. Rather, yeah, I think you mentioned the chamber. It's not the chamber event. Really is still probably the right person to get a hold of for that.
Okay. Do you think it's good timing to reach out to her on that?
I think she was away earlier this week, but she'll be back probably this
In the
say
next couple
Monday.
weeks?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
From my opinion, Pat, council has been desiring to support this committee. And if there's something that we feel strongly needs to be funded in some way, I think that we'd have a receptive ear, not to guarantee it, but and it's any initiative that's in support of executing on the climate action plan. So I think that'd be an easy conversation.
Yeah, I mean, that's like our investments in the vehicles and whatnot recently is all part of that.
Yeah.
Plan and implementing part of those actions that are in the climate action for the town.
And this committee did go through the process, which I think I mentioned earlier this year in as part of reviewing the climate action plan and what had been implemented, setting priorities for this year. So I believe I shared, but I'll share again the work plan that was approved by council for this year, the climate action work plan in particular, which this committee played a large role in developing, and we'll be going through a similar process later this fall to set priorities for next year. And the committee will be, of course, involved in that as well.
When was the work plan finalized? You had said March, so I just wanted to make sure Pat's got the most recent.
That sounds about right.
Okay.
I believe, yeah, that was when the sort of evaluation of the status of the climate action plan strategies was completed. We were a little late to getting on the climate action work plan because of just my start date. But for the next year, we'll be looking at aligning it with the council's calendar year work plan. So looking at starting that process with this committee and potentially in October.
Phoebe's only been with us for how long now? Year and a half?
8 months.
8 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had an interim representative Bob Brown for a while. Martin, can you hear us okay today?
I can, yes.
I think we can move on.
Yeah. Great discussion. I love it. Discussion of increase, Phoebe, I'm gonna move on.
Yeah.
Discussion of increasing youth involvement with the committee, including a potential youth ambassador program.
Yes. This was me again.
This is you.
Well, I wanted to just field it. I don't know how much we can discuss it, but the couple things that I wrote down is like the youth person. So we used to have a youth member on our committee.
It was great.
Yeah, she was great. It's just how important youth perspective and activation is in the work that we're doing. I also think to the point about amplification is really critical. That if we engage students, we can engage student bodies and the parents of student bodies, and that really amplifies our efforts. So without having a committee member that is a student, could we have a student ambassador? And I don't even know if we can get a student ambassador, but I wanted to check with staff and discuss as a group with staff, can we do that? Can a student sit in here and participate in our meetings at public comment? Or what shape or form could that look like? Then I think we can go into the community and see if we have anyone interested. So I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on it, but more or less evaluating what would be possible.
Right. So it is possible to develop a sort of youth ambassador program like that. We didn't find any examples of it. So it would be sort of creating it from scratch. And so the question is really for the committee, whether there's an individual or group of you that wants to take on sort of developing what the goals would be for that position, duties of that position, and sort of working through with staff how that would function. But yes, they would essentially be coming to these meetings as a member of the public, not as a voting member, and providing their comment during public comment, or potentially engaging with ad hoc subcommittees. That would all sort of have to be worked out. But this item is really just to see if there's interest from the committee in developing such a program and who would be interested in working on that.
When my kids went through Redwood, they are encouraged to create new clubs, new organizations, and there's already environmental organizations and various different things. Meredith was a woman, a young lady that joined us when she was in the 10th grade, I think, and then she's graduated and moved on. I think she leveraged her experience here and her interest, and she's in George Washington now. So I think it got her somewhere, but if there's somebody that has an interest, if there's somebody on the committee, maybe that has a high school student or somebody in junior high, it might be a good way for you to, that person to plug into the schools a little bit.
Would it be possible to contact Redwood High's environmental group to see if anybody might want to?
So
That would be one idea, yeah.
I have the contact for one of the groups. I think there's 2 or 3. But I do have a contact there. So if we did create a description of what this role would be, I think we can shepherd it through there. And I also think that, maybe there would be more than one. There'd be a high schooler, there would be a hall ambassador potentially. So I think we could make the connections if we all agree that this would be a good thing to do.
Is there discussion on it? I'd love to hear people's opinions. Is this noise? Do people think this should be a good idea?
So what would be the objectives to get, you're thinking they would be spreading, the message into the high school community, or we're more interested in getting feedback from, high school age population about what are their priorities, what would you want to get out of it? I'm just sort of trying to think like what sort of person would you
Both.
Yeah.
So I think both. I know we've talked a lot about the student population as giving us feedback, like, does our checklist resonate, or how would young people engage in this or even action against it? So I think their perspective is really important. But I also think they might take some of the things that we're working on here and take them into the school.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've always thought like maybe an assembly, they would stand up at an assembly and talk about whatever topic we're talking about at the time. So I think it's both.
Mm-hmm.
Something else that we wanted was to have them participate in our outreach when we have a booth. If we could have them on board, it was great having Meredith there when she was available, because she studied in the city. That was a little problematic sometimes, but so that would be great, I think, to have someone other than the old farts in the committee, for the people to talk to. It would be great. It also helps to encourage the parents, to get on board. So I think that's important. Have them be part of the face of this committee as well.
Yeah.
In public, we could cover them and what they're doing in the chronicles, that sort of thing.
Pressure their parents to make the next car purchase. Yeah.
Yes.
Got hard, actually.
Yeah,
Right.
It's one thing to have someone just come and sit at the meetings, but perhaps when you have the opportunity to create the annual priorities, to have a student committee be assigned to review it, that committee go in and say, okay, you've taken part in it, will you help us implement it on these 2 days to share with the public?
Yeah.
Is there a faculty advisor for these groups at Redwood? Do we know?
I think there are faculty. I don't know for all the clubs. I know for some of them.
Well, that would be a way to help make what Karen's talking about happen. It would, provide that structure there. Anyway.
I've done guest lectures for the environmental science teacher at Redwood. And I think he's still there.
So that would be great.
Yeah, but so that outside of my role here, I was providing content to their classroom. The program at Redwood is amazing.
What is
Let's get them involved.
Yeah.
What are the committees?
At Redwood, or what are the clubs or whatever?
I think there's like 50 plus clubs, but I think you mean related to climate. So I know that one that I work with is, I don't know the exact name, not work with, that I have connected with in the past, that was going to do some work with Meredith, and they stopped by our one of our tables at the farmers market. So I don't know all of them, but
Just so it's understood, Meredith was on the committee. Council accepted her application, even though she was such a young age.
Mhm.
And it brought a vitality, a little bit of vibrancy to this committee and some connectivity. I kind of miss it. I mean, you guys bring so much as well, but that was the benefit of having Meredith on the committee, was her perspective as a student. She also had the challenges of time management as a student and the priority of education. So that was another issue. It was really cool to have such a young woman on the committee.
and I think these are all really good questions that if we decided as a committee to move forward, we should compile these questions, figure out who all the groups are. Like there's the, at the at the grammar school, they have like the green team or whatever. So
Mhm.
we've reached out to them in the past. But yes,
You have good to have faculty's input, if there is a faculty contact on how they could best participate, whether it's an annual review, or whether it's sitting in our meetings, or what their take.
Let me just take a pulse check. Are we positive on this topic? Are we thinking this is worth our time?
I think it's cool. I'm happy to brainstorm with you and think about, the question is making it actually useful. at the end of the day.
Right.
So it's not just kind of fun, but actually useful. So that would be, but yeah, it'd be great. We can make it work.
Sounds like a perfect ad hoc committee assignment.
But I hear what you're saying, which is like, how do we activate it in a way that is beneficial for the students who are participating and the student body and the group? So
I think we have the history, we have some experience. It's not going to be some crazy idea, so it should be fairly easy to be successful.
so you just need somebody to raise their hand to design it. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. One or up to 3 if you want to make it an ad hoc committee, and I can provide you with some starting points or what staff is looking for in order to get enough information to launch this program, and some sort of similar examples that we have that start with.
Why don't we organize it this way? Let's transition into the next topic and bring them together. Can I propose that? So currently, I'm not, Phoebe, I don't know where you're going to go with this topic, but I see that currently the committee only has 2 ad hoc subcommittees. Right?
Right.
Yeah, and they at policy and communication. Because of the Brown Act, we can only have 3 people on one subcommittee at one time. From my point of view, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the topic, but ad hoc subcommittees could have a life very brief, or they could be something that goes on and lives a very long life. I think that policy and communication have been sticky. I think we started with a couple of other subcommittee ideas, and these have been 2 that have really stuck. And so the makeup of policy is Phil Leslie and myself with the Brown Act. Communication is Martin and Amy.
Mhm.
And then, is there something else you wanted to cover on privacy? I
Yes.
probably jumped again.
No, right, that's a good introduction to it. So in order, since this committee is a Brown Act committee, it's governed by, has to follow those public meeting rules. Any subcommittee that the committee creates also has to follow those rules, which means having a public meeting, posting the agenda, all of those steps that we're taking in this meeting. The exception is if it's an ad hoc subcommittee, and in order for a subcommittee to be considered ad hoc, it needs to have less than a quorum, so that's less than 4 committee members in this case. It needs to be focused really on a specific task, and it has to complete that task in a short period of time. So the current policy and communication subcommittees have, as you said, gone on for a little longer than is probably appropriate for an ad hoc subcommittee. So going forward, and as part of this item, committee can start considering how we'd like to structure those going forward. That ad hoc subcommittees do need to have really clearly defined finite tasks that are going to end at some point. So, for example, the task that the committee has been working on, as you mentioned, is the policy and communications and community engagement subcommittees are the 4 that I have in the discussion section of the staff report. There's encouraging EV charging stations, installations at various commercial and office properties around town, reviewing the countywide EV acceleration strategy, and providing recommendations to staff, writing articles for the newsletter, and planning future events. So some of those tasks are finite and they could be accomplished in an ad hoc subcommittee structures. Others are ongoing and they really should not be accomplished in an ad hoc structure. However, that's not the only way that this committee can get work done. So you can make decisions in meetings like we have today, for example, on the car show. You all volunteered to participate. That's a great way to get that task done. The committee can also assign individuals to complete tasks outside of committee meetings, and those individuals can work with staff or work with up to 2 other committee members to complete those tasks. They just can't be called a subcommittee, can't be a formal subcommittee. And so those are sort of the 3 options. There's the completing tasks during committee meetings, completing tasks individually or with staff, or with 2 less than 4 other committee members, or creating an ad hoc, which really needs to be very well defined and have a defined task that's going to be completed.
So if we were to,
questions?
so if we were to circling back on this topic of having a relationship with the schools, that could be a discrete task
Right.
that no more than 4 people could execute.
No more than
More
3
than
people.
3.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, yeah.
less than
That's what I
4.
meant to say. That's
Yeah,
what I
no
meant
more
to
than.
say.
But it could also be an ad hoc subcommittee because it would be
Yeah.
like reviewing it, making sure that, doing some of the outreach, and then it would end when we actually decided to move forward or not.
Right.
You could also do an ad hoc subcommittee for like, we want to do an outreach to the HOA or other community organizations. That could be an ad hoc subcommittee, right? For developing that presentation and that advocacy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it just has to be really clear what the task is and it's going to be completed. So even for the engagement work that has been done, you could create an ad hoc subcommittee to prepare for the car show. And then once the car show is over, that subcommittee is disbanded. Just needs to be clear.
And then outside of meetings, we can connect with one other person and come to you on
Yes.
things.
Yes.
Okay.
So, for example, Martin's been writing articles for the newsletter. He's been doing that mostly on his own, but coordinating with Amy and myself, and that's totally fine to happen outside.
I'm surprised how many people read the Chronicles. It does get read by a lot of people in town.
Martin, yay.
I don't know.
I'm recruiting others too. Karen is my next victim for helping me do newsletters. So
I'd love to.
So I just want to make sure it's clear, just because we had some discussions with our experts in-house and staff side as well, just about how to formulate these subcommittees versus the ad hoc. The regular subcommittees just are Brown Act bodies. The ad hoc is ones that are the finite terms, specific tasks, and our advisory, of course, they would have to come back to the committee, to the full committee to actually take action on it.
So today there are only the two committees. Are those ad hoc or are they considered proper committees? They're supposed to be ad hoc, but they're not. Okay.
They are ad hoc.
Sorry, not supposed to say that out loud, but yeah.
Right.
well, and it really turns out that the communications is not a subcommittee. It's just, when members of the committee want to contribute stuff to the Chronicles or to support other outreach, we just do it. So I think that's the way that's got to be, unless we had some specific objective to, develop a letter for the Marin IJ or something like that, in which case that would be like an ad hoc committee. Do I have that right?
That's right.
I mean, just as the new guy coming in, my observation was that policies seem like there's just way too many topics to be in one committee, given, it kind of encompasses almost everything you're doing, right? So as I talked to Phoebe about it a couple months ago, I thought, to me, sort of transport was kind of one possible branch off, whether it's an ad hoc or a formal committee. The reach code stuff is, requires obviously a lot of focus and it's very complex and needs to be closely, worked with staff as well. So those seem like kind of two clear divisions. Outreach might be a separate topic, whether it's tech, fault communication, or there's specific outreach. I don't know, but it struck me that policy as a committee was a bit of a.
But I think that's right in that it then touches outreach potentially, but there's specific actions policy committee might take on those two topics, whether that's making recommendations on reach codes or EV charging. So yes.
Right. And the policy subcommittee has been working on discrete tasks. They've just all been under the sort of umbrella of policy, when really it would be better to have, for example, the review that you just did of the reach codes. It would be better to have a reach code ad hoc subcommittee.
Hindsight is 20/20.
Or if you needed it, right? It depends how many people were commenting on the reach codes, right? Because if it was all three, yes, but if it's two or one, then you don't even need it.
Right. Well, you could all comment individually on the
Right.
reach codes as well and just bring that directly to staff.
I'm now not remembering the exact agenda item that we're discussing. Existing committees or
We're discussing morphing existing committees into smaller
can I
divisions.
Either
tasks,
Tasks.
yeah, sort of brainstorming here. Such a great idea to outreach the community whenever we can, including the communications. But what I see is sort of missing is data collection once out there. How many homes have electrified? And then, are we having any difference? Is it next year? Is it greater? Is it effective? Is there, sounds like a great subcommittee to do within the Chronicles to have, an online survey of which, I realize they're very easy. I've never done one. Why? I have some input in structural surveys, but not a lot. Anybody with any other expertise, but I think that would be a very critical tool, to have an annual valuation. How many homes are heated by natural gas still? Have you thought of, going to a heat pump water heater? And then if it changes year by year, because that's the only way we see if you're effective.
That is one element that's being addressed as part of the countywide electrification plan that's taking place. So that's the sort of stage where we are right now, is working on collecting all that data. And there is a appliance survey that happens statewide that collects that sort of data on which appliances are natural gas, which are electric.
How often is that survey done?
You know, I'd have to check with the consultant who's working on that. I think it's a 5-year.
That's exactly my, when I was involved in it way back when, it's just not done very frequently. And I'm wondering if, can you drill down to Corte Madera, for instance, whereas if you did a visit monkey something survey, you know, they're
You could
very,
do like a Google form.
yeah, they're really easy. I certainly wouldn't want to, you know, repeat efforts or whatever, but if we had a very small, easy survey, just to get a pulse of it. I mean, that's often done too. You have a longer term, you know, 5 years really thorough survey, broader region compares different things. But if we had something where we could gain sort of a, doing kind of with just, so, you know, 10 questions, you know, just the basics that we want to know.
Just
Yeah.
discussion, it seems like there's learning what the county is doing
Yeah.
and then finding out how that's being done and how that can be useful and relevant to Corte Madera when
Yeah.
and then the efficacy of
Is it-
creating a
Yeah.
Yeah,
But does that mean I have to volunteer?
Yeah, it's such a good idea. You should do it. But I think there's,
mind of
yeah,
people feel that would be useful. And maybe you already know most of the answers anyway. We could talk about that.
but I think
Yeah.
it's a finding out what is available in terms of
Yeah.
metrics, where are the holes and how do we measure ourselves? So like Merton has done a lot of work on the EV adoption numbers as an example. That's one piece of what you're talking about. But I think it's a
No, I was just, I mean, there's the data piece of it and then there's the sentiment piece of it, right? And with a survey monkey or something like that, you're only going to get a very small percentage of the
Correct.
residents to respond. So that's very much sentiment oriented. And
Right.
are you considering buying, right?
Yeah.
The data I would assume you can get from either the town, the county, or PG&E plus, you know, any other. There must be.
It's actually not as transparent as you may think. You certainly have natural gas hookups, but you don't necessarily have natural gas. Do you know whether they're using it for heating or are they using it for just cooking? So it's you can certainly extrapolate.
I wonder if O-Power would have that. They probably would. So.
So I think your point is a good one, getting
Yeah.
people to actually respond to a survey. Like
Everybody's got to get their emails.
well, and then they did a workshop, you guys did it around the reach codes, and I think you got 12 responses on the survey or how many?
That was around 20, was not.
Yeah.
Not a
It's
great
not
response.
huge. Good point. Yeah.
there's 4,000 homes.
Yeah, a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you offering a survey at your tables when you do the defense?
No.
The actual power use consumption is private. You can't get that information from PG&E.
Correct.
We have the aggregate,
Yeah.
but no.
You can't break it down.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think you could. I don't know how much you can drill down, but you might be able to get hookups as well, but you can't, from there you can't tell you.
I would propose looking at what we have and where the holes are, I guess it's starting.
Okay,
Right. So by
Yeah.
the time of the next meeting, I should have the results of that initial data collection effort that's happening countywide.
Okay.
And so I can share those at the next meeting with you all and you go from there and see if that's as specific as what
That would be great.
And Martin, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I feel like you've done some of this, I know on the EVs, but what other
Yeah.
pieces?
Data acquisition is the big problem. I mean, that's where it's at. I get the EV data from the CEC that gets it from the DMV, you know, that stuff, and that gets updated quarterly, and it's, you know, it's accurate, but it's I do with it what I can. The other stuff I'd looked at is simply census data to find out, well, how many people are there in Corte Madera that are renters versus homeowners, family sizes, income distribution, that sort of thing. which, we should know when we're making decisions about what to push and what to, to back off on, that sort of thing. So it's data acquisition is always the issue. So if anybody has any ideas about where to get the data, then we can churn it.
So I don't know if you guys, when you get your utility bill, you'll have a comparison of how you rank next year. So there's a company that sits behind that called O-Power, which was the company that actually analyzes the data. And it's sort of quite simplistic on one hand, but it actually turns out to be reasonably effective if you tell people that they're using 50% more than their neighbors. They're kind of like,
Yeah, right.
Showers are too long. I just wonder if there's some way to get, obviously anonymized data at a say zip code level or something from either O-Power or PG&E. Karen, you probably know whether this is attainable.
But what would that tell you?
Well, they could tell you. So my point was that O-Power, they're actually able to figure out whether you're using it for heating. I mean, it's a pretty decent approximation whether it's a shower or your furnace is running. They can sort of figure it out, right? So
All I know. Their suggestion is totally wrong. I'm a one. So I don't know. I know PG&E. How did that? It was a way of energy conservation. I don't know. Filters down to anything energy. And again, I'm 5 years. But it's useful in terms of getting people to think about it. In terms of, are you using furnace? How many people in the household? It gets a little, because I know they have that all wrong with me. I could be wrong. Maybe
but
it's
if your interest was to get, data on sort of are things changing, right? I wonder if there's a historical data set that would show you that, there is a reduction, for instance, on a per capita basis in the natural gas usage in Corte Madera, for instance, would be an interesting fact, or it's going the other way, right? So you might not know the specifics, but
it's going to be released as part of this certification plan. So again, I can bring that to the next meeting and we can see if that's answer some questions or if the group is still interested in diving deeper into that data.
And Christina works does
Yes.
that too every year.
She's doing that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
She's doing
because you can look at it at the highest level. So
the key. Ideally, it would be great to get what appliances they're using as opposed to energy usage. Energy usage can vary by so many factors.
well, this at least separates it into heat, right? Heat and water. I think. So we should look at this data because I think if she does it annually, anyway, it might be a great place to start.
Okay. All right.
Because Martin, that's what we talk a lot about, right? Is the heat.
Yes. It's space and water heating are the 40% use of the natural gas. Yeah. And I don't know where she gets that data for Corte Madera or if it's imputed. I don't know. It'd be great to know. I'd love to get more specificity on that.
So it can get to that level, which is helpful. I mean, you can't see fireplace or something, but the stove is in there and
My recollection is residential space and water heating is much greater than 40%, but
40% each.
Each is 40%. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Cooking is 6. That's why, it's not a big source for greenhouse gas emissions.
So in terms of the tasks that the committee has been working on, is there interest in creating new ad hoc subcommittees to take on those tasks or assigning an individual to take on those tasks? Specifically, there's the 4 that were in the staff report, and then additionally considering the youth ambassador program as a potential additional task to take on.
can you run through the 4 tasks again?
Yeah, so that is encouraging property owners to install EV charging stations and informing them about available rebates, which I believe Bill has been working on. Reviewing the countywide EV acceleration strategy and providing recommendations to staff on actions to pursue. Not sure if that's been initiated. It was something that the group expressed interest in. writing articles for the Chronicles. Martin has been taking on that task. And then planning outreach events, such as the Corte Madera.
The fourth one, I think we can remove that. I think if I was gonna replace it with something, I would say like a short-term ad hoc or a task on the advocacy presentation. So,
Okay, yeah, and we can, of course, committee can create new ad hoc subcommittees as needed, which is the recommendation stuff.
I want to make sure I understood what you just said, an advocacy presentation.
yeah, we've
Yeah.
talked a lot about it, which is, and Leslie and I presented to the Lions Club about our committee and updating on the stats in Corte Madera and talking about all the things that people can do to take action. And so the idea was to take that and go to the homeowners associations, to go to all the Corte Madera, committees or groups within the community. That's been on my to-do. I just haven't had the space and time to do it. So I was just saying, I don't think we need a subcommittee or task on events because I think we've got that pretty figured out. But I think this is worthy of either, I don't know that it's an ad hoc subcommittee, it could be a task.
So is the idea that this, what was the policy committee, that's going to be replaced with more focused tasks? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, either, it doesn't have to be an ad hoc subcommittee,
Right.
it can be just one individual working on a project.
Because any ad hoc subcommittee is short-lived.
That's right. Right.
You could have been like an ad hoc subcommittee just for the reach code analysis or something like that. If that's it, right? That's instead of the policy subcommittee. So that's what we're suggesting the committee consider.
Do you think that the work on the reach code for this committee is done?
Well, no, it will come back, but
I mean, for the
subcommittee,
subcommittee is done.
I think that's,
That was my understanding from our
It
meeting
depends,
last
maybe
week.
depends on the Ninth Circuit,
no,
maybe.
Or you're ready to go either way.
yeah, exactly.
But when you say short-term, you mean to work on a task and complete that task, even though the task might be drawn out somewhat more than everybody thinks. You're still working on that task.
Yeah,
Right, it just needs to be a task that can be completed, that has a clear end.
I mean, it could be a year, that could be short-term because it takes a year to figure out what reach code we're gonna adopt.
But maybe it's chunked out, right? Like, hey, we're gonna evaluate the reach code. Oh, so it doesn't it can be a year if
I
that's how long
don't
it takes.
think the act specifies a
Okay.
certain length,
Got it.
just it
So
needs.
I
to
might
be
be
really-
timeline.
Yeah.
Task oriented, that's
right.
Yeah, that's
It's
what that's.
working.
I just created a council such committee last night, ad hoc advisory subcommittee with 2 council members to figure out what we're gonna hang in the new, what artwork and pictures and whatnot we're gonna hang in the town hall. But that's like 6, it'll take some time.
Yeah,
Process for that. But that'll be done at some point and then we'll get rid of it.
so maybe a way to approach this is look at the 4 or 5, if there's another one, and then just discuss if that needs to be more than like 3 people to handle it, or is it 1 or 2 working alongside you? Is that a good approach?
Yeah.
Task assignments, yeah, they are.
She wants volunteers.
Well, I just want to like get us somewhere on this, like where are we?
Thank you.
I'm happy to work on number 2. The EV acceleration.
Yeah. that looks like a good one.
Could it be writ slightly larger than just electric cars? Is this more broadly transport, or is this a very specific
So-
task around?
Right, so the EV acceleration strategy is a document that was developed by MCP, I
Mhm.
believe it was a countywide process. And so the task there, this is actually one of the items that is on the climate action work plan for this year is reviewing that strategy, and it has at the end a list of policy options to increase EV adoption. And the ask is for the committee to review that and make recommendations on which of those actions are priority actions. And then those would be ones that staff would also evaluate and we would consider for inclusion on next year's climate action work plan.
Happy,
Well, I'm happy to work on it. So.
and I'll just say Phil has been has dove pretty deep into that as well.
Into communication with.
Yeah.
EV vendors.
EV adoption vendors, plug-in
Yeah.
stations.
Right.
But the policy, it's,
I had those as two sort of separate items.
Those are
because
two separate items.
Phil has more been working, my understanding, on the outreach to property owners and encouraging installations, the informing about the rebates that are available. Is that
Well,
right?
not yet, first.
Okay,
but they're
That would be the
distinct.
ultimate goal,
okay.
would be understanding how that process works.
But they're distinct. Those are two different things.
Yes, I would say they're two different items. If we start putting them together,
Yeah.
then it's turning into an EV subcommittee, which is
Mhm.
not as defined.
All right, so that feels right?
Yeah.
Okay. Martin, do you still want the Chronicles?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
You don't.
Yeah,
I was like,
and I'd be happy to assist.
oh, there we
Oh,
go.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Thinking that sounds like fun.
And Karen's already come up with good ideas for it, so we're on a roll.
If there's a point where, one of my many past lives was a ghostwriter, and I wrote, short pieces for a whole bunch of publications, and actually published something in the IJ recently about the new net metering proposal from last year. If there's a point where we have something we really want to say in the IJ or
Fabulous.
something like that, I'm happy to help or lead that effort.
I have some similar editorial skills too.
So great.
Yeah.
PR plan, that's what I hear right now.
But it needs to be something like, we can't run those all the time, so we need to kind of really do something, a big message from the climate action committee or the town or the committee or whatever is the way. That's right.
So I would suggest on that point that Martin continue being the point person there and then coordinate as needed with other committee members to.
Right.
complete
And that works both ways. I'll ask you, and if you come up with things, send them to me. That's perfect.
Right.
And then I'll just make sure it happens with Phoebe and Mike Moriarty to, put it in the Chronicles or whatever else we want to do from a publication standpoint.
To avoid the Brown Act, it's been, instead of blasting it to the entire committee, it's been good to go through Phoebe and have her disseminate information, communication.
Yeah.
Amy, do you want to take on this ambassador topic with me? To do that?
I would do that, except I also would need help on this advocacy stuff. I don't know that I can do both of those things.
I have interest in getting me in because I saw a lot of benefit in that and promise. Does somebody want to just brainstorm on the ambassador program with me?
I'm happy to do it.
You want to do that?
Yeah, and
Because I
I'm
can
the
do a
person
lot
that,
of, it can be a discrete task.
yeah.
Yeah.
We can do that and work with Phoebe between now and the next meeting.
Let's do that.
Okay. We'll take on that task and then I can actually run it by the person that I've connected with at Redwood and say, hey, does this
Yeah.
even sound like something somebody would want to do?
And the environmental science teacher, I'm forgetting his name.
Okay.
We could connect with him again too.
All right.
I seem socially at events sometimes.
Presentation.
This is a paradigm shift because the policy subcommittee, as we were going through the REACH codes, it was kind of beefy. And I saw the benefit of having recurring meetings from time to time. I felt like we were just kind of gaining some steam then.
I think on something like that, there's still an opportunity if the committee wants to create an actual, either an ad hoc advisory, but a committee for that discrete policy work. That can still occur because if it's tied especially to an ordinance adoption or some recommendations on an ordinance, there's a finite time period in which that occurs. Right, so that's, that ad hoc advisory subcommittee can still be created up to 3 people in the committee. And can meet together. And provide its recommendation to the body at the end of that.
The beefiest topic there, and I'm cognizant of time here. The beefiest topic there is just electrification and adoption uptake. And are we doing enough as a body to get more people to decarbonize and electrify?
But that, maybe I would say that's a broader question
Yeah, I know.
without any sort of guardrails to sort of say this is the end of that discussion.
It seems like that should be one of the beefiest subcommittee topics.
But it could be a discussion outside of committee meetings between 2 members. And you decide, hey, we should tackle
Put
this.
this on the agenda or something.
And we're gonna have a subcommittee about this, right?
I remember we talked at one of the prior meetings. Asking about building codes, about rather than, well, having some kind of an incentive, on the, maybe on a permit fee.
Yeah, we always like to reduce the permit fees or just zero amount. We do that all the time. We're talking about that all the time.
Does it ever go anywhere or, yeah,
Yeah, so that is reviewing the fee, permit fee structure is on the work plan for this year, and that will be considering the request of this committee as part of that process.
okay.
Phoebe, the work plan keeps on coming up in the topics identified in the work plan. Are we on topic right now with, are we being faithful to our work plan here?
Yes, the items that this committee has been working on have been directly related to the work.
Okay, I want to make sure.
Yes.
That doesn't mean we can't be even more productive than that work plan, but that's our, we just get a passing grade of a C. When I think that, right? No.
No, I don't think so.
It's an A word.
Yeah, it's an A work plan. Okay. So do we have a sign? Is there more we need to do here?
So just to recap, what I have is that Phil is going to continue working on the EV charging station outreach topic. Pat, we volunteered to review the countywide EV acceleration strategy, and I'll send that to you if you haven't seen it already. Martin is going to continue working on the
Communication.
Chronicles, the newsletter, and then Amy, it sounds like you'll continue to lead the outreach events.
As much as it needs to be, and maybe you're thinking that doesn't need to be a drawn out task.
Oh, no, I think we've just got it dialed down that is easy.
But it's the communication piece that you want some help on.
The presentation, and I think that we've already gone over it. I just need to actually do it. And then I think the next step there is who we present it to, and that's where I would probably ask the committee, hey, can you go present to so-and-so? And you know what I
To
mean?
the HOS.
Yeah, or whichever, yeah. So it's just been on my list of things to do and I haven't gotten to it. So yes, my feeling is like somebody else take it, but I think I've got it. I'll give it one more
It
meeting,
seems like you're close.
maybe. Yeah. I mean, we've given it, we're just updating it. So yeah, I'll take it one more round.
Have the Lions asked for another opportunity to have a speak with him?
No, but I think Leslie and I both felt, and I think they did too, that it was a good conversation and discussion, and it had impact. And so we just want to do more of that in our community.
Yeah. And Leslie, she's not here today, but she's completed the Al Gore training program, which I think has been helpful for her. So, I'm forgetting what the name of it is.
What is it?
That Al Gore has a training program on communication about climate change.
Oh, great.
So he has you pay money to get the education.
Got it.
And Les just had completed that curriculum.
Okay, well, so maybe I'll talk to her.
She should be a really good resource, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we'll
Amy
take
and
the
Dave
task
are-
of, basically, just to understand what we want to put together is an outline of what this would do, like the goal of a student ambassador. And what the, like a job description, if you will, is that what we're looking for?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I can send you some starting points.
Great.
And then we can do that between the next, now and the next meeting.
Yeah,
Cool.
And we're, just so I'm clear, but it's not, also, we are not moving forward, we wouldn't be calling we wouldn't be having a policy subcommittee and then communications subcommittee on the agenda, like reports or anything like that, we would be calling it that.
Yeah, and just to restate it, I think we're being more task oriented
Yes.
and more work plan oriented
Okay.
Yes.
and more discrete and less structural. And
Yeah.
which
So
I
the
think is
only-
where you two are trying to get us to go. So
Yes, so the only ad hoc subcommittee right now is focused on the youth ambassador program.
oh, we're
That's just
actually an
because
ad
we're
hoc
two.
subcommittee.
Well, you don't have to be.
We were just gonna take it as a task.
Okay, so we don't have any ad
I think
hoc subcommittees.
I think being task oriented and work plan oriented should be the way we talk about this.
Yeah.
So it's action oriented,
Yes,
Okay.
discrete. I like that. So just, I think it'd be more focused and less structural.
right.
And then I feel if you need help, I know you'll reach out to on the ED work. Yeah. Anyone,
And likewise, it seems like Pat has some knowledge about my subject. That's okay to call on somebody to come meet with you to discuss it.
as long
Right,
as it's-
yeah, so the thing to be aware of now that not as grouped together, which maybe made it easier to remember how many people you're communicating with, is that you just can't communicate with more than 3 of your fellow committee members about the same topic outside of the meeting. And also be aware of who the committee member you're talking to might have talked to before they talked to you, because there's also a provision about serial meetings.
Yeah,
And if one person tells someone else, and the other person tells someone else, and that person tells a 4th person,
That's
then you
equal to me.
violated the Brown Act. Yeah. So just be aware of who your other committee members have communicated with about the same topic and.
And we can only communicate via the town email. Do we have a phone? We don't can't make phone calls or?
Oh, yeah. You can-
Oh,
yeah,
That's fine.
Okay. We have it. Is there a contact list for the committee?
I don't think we do. have
Yeah, I
one.
don't know.
That's a
Actually, we
good
haven't had a
question.
phone, we haven't created the,
Maybe
there's
just
the email. list,
email
obviously,
and
but-
ask for the phone.
Yeah.
Right.
and does anybody have a problem giving up their phone number? I don't.
Would be a matter of public record, I guess.
You can
Email has
exchange your
been really
number
handy.
after the meeting.
Yeah, just,
Yeah.
Let's just, once after the meeting, when we walk out, you can exchange.
Yeah, just not in a serial manner.
Okay, I think we're good on this one. Are we not?
I want to, it's 6 o'clock. I know people have family responsibilities, so Amy, are we done with topic 5?
Yeah.
Your point of view. Updates and reports. Staff have an updated report.
Just a quick update to explain the attachment for that item that was included. That was the slide deck from the August 2nd building electrification roadmap development workshop. So that is the countywide process that's taking place right now to develop a plan for building electrification countywide. And we're in the community engagement phase. So that was the first workshop. The next one is going to be September 27th. And Dave, I know.
Yeah, I volunteered and then I had it on the wrong day on my calendar and I live by my calendar, so I missed it. So thanks for including that in here.
Yes. So for the
And I
future
will plan
meeting.
on going to the next one.
Okay, great.
If I can get that in the right place in my calendar. Thanks.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
6A in this was really cool to see with Corte Madera in there. It's a slide that shows against the green building requirements where we are
Yeah.
versus the other jurisdictions. And
Those are the beefiest slides.
I thought it was really great.
Is this I have a question about the reach codes. Is there a good time to ask that? Would this be
Sure.
appropriate time to do that or not? Because I'm late to the party on that one.
Right, so we can't have discussion in the updates and reports section, but if it's just a question and information from staff, then that's.
Yeah, I guess the question is, if you could tell me if this falls outside, maybe we can have an AOB section at the end, but I was surprised to not see on-demand water heaters as part of the list of options as for the reach code qualification. Was that ever talked about, or was it ruled out for some reason?
So on demand.
Electric water heaters.
Electric water heater.
So for shower heads, for instance. So-
Right. I'm not sure. The codes that the staff have been evaluating here are the model codes that were developed by the county last fall
Mhm.
or last year. And those were based off of some that I think you're speaking to the flexible compliance path
Mhm.
that had that list of options. Those were created by the state reach code team that evaluated the energy savings from various different measures. So I'm not sure whether it was included in their analysis. I know that the county and we only included measures that were evaluated by them and had a certain level of energy savings. So I'm not sure. I didn't look into that.
Okay, I'd be interested to know. I mean,
It's kind of hard because we aren't supposed to have a conversation unless it's been agendized. But we can ask staff certain
what kind of things?
topic, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, This is why bureaucracy takes time. But I began to appreciate it actually. Anything else from staff?
That's it.
And any committee member updates, individuals? And then the ad hoc subcommittee report out is we had a working session last week. And Phil's been doing great work with some support from Leslie and Leon. Understand how to approach a property owner's board to get more uptake on charging stations. The vision being that Corte Madera becomes a place where charging of EVs is ubiquitous. That they pop up all over the place like mushrooms. That's our whole sort of. So we had a good working session at Phil's house.
Just one on the staff, I forgot to mention on the staff one, they are the town center. I think you've seen some construction out there of the Bank of Rivian chargers that they're actually building out in the parking lot.
No,
So they're building the Bank of Rivian EV, charging stations out there.
really, where? In the-
Right behind the gas station.
Will they be publicly accessible?
It's probably like Tesla. I mean, it's probably, I don't know.
Yes, some of them will be publicly accessible, as I understand it, right away, and some of them, there's some software that they need to work out before they'll be publicly accessible. So eventually, I believe that they will all be publicly accessible.
Publicly meaning not just for Rivians,
Yes. So correct.
right?
Somewhere in our documents, the subcommittee did a little work on, created a memo about where could charging stations be in town, who owns that property, how could we get more? So that was a little body of work that the subcommittee created, if you want to take a look at that.
That's really great. That's,
And I would say, they did take advantage of sort of new state laws that sort of just bypass a lot of the discretionary stuff that towns can put on those sorts of projects. So it went straight through a building permit process that I don't know the numbers of how long it took going on, but it was relatively streamlined compared to past EV charging projects proposed in commercial lots.
Has the town explored putting charging stations in the town parking lots next to like a gazebo?
That is one of the items that we're working on right now.
So It's tricky because some of the property that you think is owned by the town is actually owned by the county. So ownership isn't always as clear as you think. So anything else from committee members themselves or subcommittee members? No?
Dave, did you want to give an update on the reach code topic that we discussed at that meeting?
Well, we agreed, our recommendation was to accept the reach code language proposed by the town.
By the county.
But, well, by the town, it'll become law or policy for the town without modifications after we read the document line by line, word by word. We didn't see any benefit in deviating what staff had written. So.
And thank you for taking the time to review that.
What we reviewed, well, it's what we discussed in the last meeting.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
So it'll stay as is.
Yep.
Got it. Thank you.
And then that process is going there. We're waiting for a legal situation with the circuit 9, the Ninth Circuit Court
Yes.
to be able to, and then town will take that to the council. Do I have the right, Adam?
So we're waiting to hear from the Ninth Circuit Court whether they are going to rehear the case after the three-judge panel gave the decision. And so they haven't given us a definitive date when they're gonna make that decision, but it's expected this fall. And then at that point, we'll have more information on which of the reach codes we'll be able to move forward. And assuming we can move some of those forward, they would first come back to this committee with a final draft ordinance for your recommendation to council.
And legal counsel hasn't even opened it yet, right? That review hasn't happened.
Right, a detailed legal
Detailed.
review by our attorney is not.
So that's going to happen as well.
Yes.
This is why these things take so much time. Okay. Adam, was there anything else? Okay. So any suggestions for future agenda items?
I just have the one request for the electrification plan data to be shared, assuming I have that at the next meeting.
The survey?
So it'll be data on energy use in Corte Madera and by building type and appliance.
Is there anything else that you see coming up on the agenda? In the past, you've had various people come in and talk with us. Is there something else you've got percolating?
Right, I do not have anything on the forward agenda for September. October is when I'm anticipating to have that priority setting discussion with this committee for the next year to start that conversation. So no, I don't have anything else for September. You could consider moving this item to the October meeting if we don't have any other, there aren't any other items to discuss in September.
We can decide that later. Okay. Any other topics? Nope.
Actually, I have a question. Again, I'm not sure it's not on the agenda. So do you have an AOB, like any other business topic on the agenda or not?
AOB.
That's,
Is that a TLA?
any other business. So,
I think that would be future. Well, I think that would be in other updates, reports, or.
Yeah, I think it is a Brown Act thing. It has, to, in order to
Has to
actually
be agenda.
discuss, so that the public has an opportunity to know what's going to be discussed. We don't have sort of like a, like any other business sort of agenda item where anything can be brought up for discussion.
okay, well, I'll wait till the meeting ends and then I'll ask Adam.
Sure. Outside
All
this.
If there is something that you want to put on the agenda
Yeah.
or suggest.
It's not
agenda.
meaty enough to be an agenda topic.
Okay, great. Well, I just want to welcome you both again to the committee, and if there's nothing else, I will adjourn this meeting. Adjourn.